Monitoring server health. So monitoring a single instance or a single server is one thing, but what if we have many instances, both physical and virtual, across the enterprise? Well, that's what we're going to look at in this nugget. Ways that and solutions and tools that we can use to get a nice centralized view of all of our servers within the enterprise. So we'll start this nugget off with a health monitoring overview. We'll go over the challenges of monitoring a multi-server enterprise. We'll talk about what our options are, both internally within SQL Server, such as the data collector and the SQL Server utility, and we'll give honorable mention to those external tools, such as Microsoft System Center and System Center Advisor. From there, we'll jump into the Virtual Nugget Lab. We'll take a look at how to set up the data collector and the data warehouse and how to utilize it across multiple instances. And then we'll do the same thing with SQL Server Utility. Both of these tools give us the ability to monitor all of our SQL servers in the enterprise, but they differ a little bit in how you use them. The data collector is really meant for detailed analysis, where SQL Server Utility is meant for everyday monitoring. Very high level resource utilization type stuff. So as I mentioned, monitoring a single instance is fairly straightforward because we have a lot of tools at our disposal. We have Activity Monitor, we have Performance Monitor, we have SQL Server Profiler, Extended Events, the list goes on and on. So we've got a lot of ways to find and troubleshoot problems at the single instance level. The challenge really comes when we have many SQL servers to monitor. And on top of that, especially if we have many instances or other applications or processes running on a single server, because then it becomes difficult to isolate those problems at either the instance or server level. If it's good to know that our CPU is fully utilized, but what is causing that problem? Another one is identifying problems before they occur. Wouldn't it be nice to know that our data and log files are about to run out of space before they actually run out of space and we get the alert and now again we're in firefighting mode? So it's nice to have tools that allow us to be proactive and get alerts before that happens so we can avoid becoming firefighters. Also, identifying misallocated resources. We can identify areas where we're making inefficient use of resources and then reallocate them accordingly. So we have some tools that will help us out with these challenges. We have the data collector, which is a great tool that allows us to remotely capture detailed performance information about our SQL Server instances inside of this special data warehouse that we create when we set it up. We create what's called the collection set, which is just a defined set of items like performance counters, profiler traces, transact SQL statements, so on and so forth. And then the collection uses SQL Server agent jobs to gather that data and send it to what's known as the MDW, the Management Data Warehouse. And it comes with many canned collection sets that we can use right out of the gate. So we've got ones for disk usage, server activity, query statistics, and you can even build your own custom data collection sets. And then the really nice thing is we have a bunch of pre-built reports inside of SQL Server Management Studio that sit on top of that data warehouse, so we can gather statistics from a centralized location across all of our instances. SQL Server Utility is very much like the data collector. It also has a data warehouse where it stores all of its resource information, called the UMDW, the Utility Management Data Warehouse. It's a much more lightweight schema because it collects very basic resource utilization data. So we set up what's called a UCP, a Utility Control Point. We register instances in that control point, and then we have a nice dashboard that we can use to view the status and health of all of the instances within that control point. So those are our enterprise level monitoring tools built into SQL Server. We also have some external tools, such as Microsoft's System Center 2012 Operations Manager. It's a very robust tool that enables you to centrally monitor a large number of not only servers, but devices, services, applications, virtually anything across both your physical and virtual infrastructure. And there is an add-on called the System Center Monitoring Pack for SQL Server that allows you to monitor your entire SQL Server infrastructure from Microsoft System Center. And it opens up everything from instances to databases to services, replication, policy-based management, always-on availability groups. The list goes on and on. There's also a nice cloud-based service that Microsoft provides called System Center Advisor. This, from a SQL Server perspective, is going to collect configuration and performance information, upload it to their cloud-based service, and then analyze it to provide us with recommendations about configuration changes to improve server health, to give us best practice advice, that kind of stuff. And it's easy to use, and best of all, it's free. And I actually have it open in the browser here. Let me bring it up. So here it is, systemcenteradvisor.com. Works with most of Microsoft's backend products, including SQL Server 2008 and up. It's just a very simple, clean, easy-to-use interface that allows us to proactively monitor the health and configuration of our SQL Server infrastructure. So it doesn't hurt to give this a spin because it's free. You'll gain some good insights to the health and configuration of your infrastructure. Let's talk about the differences between the data collector and SQL Server Utility. Again, both of these built into SQL Server, both of them set out to accomplish the same goal, and that is give us a way to centrally monitor the health and performance of our SQL servers. They both work by configuring a database that is going to store all the information that our servers are going to periodically send to. And then we have reports and dashboards that work on that database to, again, give us just one single view of all of our servers. So they both work the same way. They both have a data warehouse. They both capture information from multiple instances. The big difference is that the data collector is there for very detailed resource information, where SQL Server Utility is there for very basic resource information. The data collector is also a lot more flexible. We have a lot more knobs and buttons that we can use to control how it works. We have full control over how often it collects its data. We can create our own data collection sets. We have a lot of reports to work with, where SQL Server Utility is much more lightweight. We just have a simple dashboard. We can't control how often it pulls for data. When you initially set it up, it takes 45 minutes to initially collect data, and then it pulls after that every 15 minutes. But regardless, they both give us a great way to proactively monitor the health of our SQL servers. Let's head into the Virtual Nugget Lab and take a look at how they work. Welcome back to the Virtual Nugget Lab. Let's jump into Management Studio here. And let's start by working with the data collector. So if you head down to the management node, expand it, you'll see data collection. To enable it here, we want to right click and choose configure the management data warehouse. It's going to walk us through a little wizard here where we're going to do one of two things, either create the management data warehouse or set up data collection. First here, we need to create our management data warehouse. So let's do that. We'll hit next. We're going to create it on our SQL Nugget Lab server here. We'll hit the new button, and we're just going to call this, how about MDW? All right, looks good. We'll hit OK. That's going to create the database, and now we have a management data warehouse ready to go. On the security screen here, you can map your role memberships to your logins for this database. We're good here since we're administrator here, so we'll choose next, and everything else looks good. So we'll hit finish here. That's going to create it, run the scripts, and we're good to go. The next step is to run through that wizard again, only this time we're going to choose Setup Data Collection. We're going to point this to a management data warehouse. So we could run this same wizard on all of our other servers to have them point to this database, and then they'll all pipe their information into there. So let's do that. We're just going to specify the same server that we're on, choose our MDW database that we just created, and you can also enter a directory here where that data is cached locally before it's uploaded to the MDW. If you leave nothing here, it'll go into the temp directory, which is what we'll do, and we're good. When it's done, data collection will be enabled, and now we can expand this and we can see some built-in system data collection sets. So let's right-click and go to the properties of disk usage. You can see you have full control over the data collection and upload process. By default, it's going to set it up for every 6 hours. So every 6 hours, it's going to collect and upload that data to the management data warehouse. You can also do it on demand. You could pick a new schedule. This will open up all the schedules that are available inside of your SQL Server Agent installation, or you can create a new schedule. So you have full control over that process. Here's the collection items within this data collection set. It's going to analyze data files and log files. You can also choose what account to run it under and how long you want to retain this information for. By default, 730 days. There's also a collection set for query statistics and one for server activity, which actually gathers lots of good performance counter information. So you can see these are really nice. And let's go ahead and connect another instance to this here. Let's go to SQL Nugget Lab 2, and let's do the same thing. Head down to Management, right-click on Data Collection, configure the Data Management Warehouse. And what we're going to do is, again, set up data collection. We don't need to create a database because we already have one. We're just going to point this specific instance over to SQL Nugget Lab, over to that MDW. Everything else looks good. That's it. That's all there is to it. Gotta love things that are easy to set up and configure, right? And we could even script that out easily if we wanted an easy way to install this across all the instances in our enterprise. But let's do this. Let's head down here on SQL Nugget Lab 2. Let's just right-click and choose Collect and Upload Now. So there you go. That ran the job, did the collect and upload. Let's do the same thing up here on SQL Nugget Lab. Collect and upload it. And now what we can do is right-click on Data Collection, head into Reports, Management Data Warehouse, and check it out. Server Activity, Disk Usage, Query Statistics. Let's hit the Disk Usage Summary here. So there it is. Disk usage information at a high level here on SQL Nugget Lab. We can even drill in to each individual database to get some detailed information about that database. So that's SQL Nugget Lab. If we wanted to do that on our second instance, we could do the same thing. Just right-click, go into Reports here, Disk Usage Summary, and here it is. Same report, only for SQL Nugget Lab 2. And as I mentioned, you can create your own custom data collection sets. There's a stored procedure out there called SP SysCollector Create Collection Set. So say you wanted to wire up some information from your favorite DMV and let the data collector take over from there. You can absolutely do that. All right, with that, let's move on to working with SQL Server Utility. So how you do this here, one way to do it is to drop down the View menu, choose Utility Explorer. That'll open up another tab down here next to Object Explorer, and a nice little Getting Started wizard. Or I should say the Getting Started page that contains a lot of wizards. So we start here by creating a utility control point. So basically a utility control point is like a container for instances. So that way we have a way to separate servers. So if we want to create a utility control point for all of our production servers as opposed to all of our development servers. So we're going to create this one again here on SQL Nugget Lab. That looks good. We'll just leave that at the default name there, utility. Once we hit next, we're going to specify an account. So this account will be used for the proxy account for that utility collection set we saw over in data collection. That's where it's going to put all of its data for the dashboard that we're going to see here to use. So once that's set, hit next. It's going to go through a bunch of validation steps here. One of them that you may get hung up on, especially if you do what I just did, and that is run through the data collection set demo first, is that all the collection sets on those instances must be stopped. So what I did is just ran over to Object Explorer, right-clicked on each one of these, and hit Stop Data Collection Set. So you'll need everything to be stopped across all instances that hit that MDW in order to do this. All right, so I did that, and we're good. And now we can hit Next, run through a little summary here, Next again, and then it's going to create everything. It's going to initialize the UMDW, configure the UCP, and then enroll this instance in the UCP. So SQL Nugget Lab will then be a part of our monitoring. And now we're good. We can hit Finish. And now back over here, you can see we have this all lit up here for SQL Nugget Lab, and we have our nice dashboard to monitor. And now if we wanted to add more instances into this collection set, we can come down here to Manage Instances. We can right-click, choose Enroll Instance, and just walk through the wizard. Let's connect to this here, SQL Nugget Lab 2. Hit Next. Once again, specify the account. We're good there. Hit Next. It's going to run through the same process here just to make sure that everything is good to go for validation. And once this is done, we will have another instance in here that we'll be able to see in the dashboard. Perfect. Looks good. We'll hit Next, and Finish here as soon as it's done enrolling the instance. And that's all there is to it. And now we have both instances here inside of our Managed Instance area of the dashboard. And now if we were to select an instance, we can bring up the bottom pane down here, and you can see you get basic information about CPU utilization, some good information here about storage, both at the database, data file, and log file level. You can also do this at the volume level. And then you can control the policies to determine, what's a green arrow and what's a red arrow, essentially here. But in policy details, this actually shows you what your policies are currently configured as. But if you head over here to utility administration, you just have some knobs to control exactly what that is. So CPU utilization, 70% or greater, we're going to get a little red arrow. Otherwise, we're going to get a green arrow. So you can control all that here. Global policies for data tier for managed instances. Here's one we would want for this here, managed instances, to control CPU utilization, file space utilization, so on and so forth. But good general basic information about all of our instances. And now if you want to get back to the dashboard, just click on the utility control point, and this will give us a nice overview of all of our instances within this utility control point. And you can see we actually have a problem here. We have an overutilized storage volume, and that's because if we were to click on this, it'll filter out our managed instance to that instance. Our volume space here on SQL Nugget Lab is running a little low. We're almost out of disk space, so that's why we get that visual notification based on the policy for storage utilization, which I believe is 70%. Yeah, we're more than 70% full, so that's why we're getting the red arrow there. So the data collector and SQL Server Utility give us a really easy way to monitor the health of our system across multiple SQL servers. In this DBT Nugget, we got familiar with how to monitor server health. We started off with an overview where we got familiar with the challenges of monitoring multiple SQL servers. We took a look at our options and we compared the data collector and SQL Server Utility. Then we jumped into the virtual Nugget Lab. We saw how to set up, configure, and use the data collector, and how to set up, configure, and use SQL Server Utility. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.